All right, let's jump into love-hate with running backs. Listen, everybody in the fantasy community has been ready for quite some time for Tony Pollard to be the main guy in Dallas, and we get our wish this year. But it also sounds like Tony Pollard is very confident stepping up into the lead spot.
I mean, I've been ready for this moment, so the time is now. Oh, I'm good. Physically, mentally, emotionally, I'm good. I'm ready to go.
You as the lead guy, what are you telling the rest of the running back room to be able to set the tone in game one?
I mean, just do what they do. They're here for a reason, and if they need any help, just watch me, and I'll lead the way for them. I like to lead by example. Just not too much talking, but just let the guys see how I go about things. See my routine day to day, and then just how I attack the day.
The love list for running backs is led by Tony Pollard, of course, this week against the Giants. Dallas has had a lot of success in recent history against this Giants team, and Dallas did us all a favor and didn't bring back Zeke Elliott. So no surprise to see Tony Pollard kicking off the love list for week one.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear his quote talking about how he doesn't like to do a lot of talking. He likes to lead by example. I'm the complete opposite. I actually don't lead by example. I do a lot of talking. It's pretty much all I have. So I'm the anti-Tony Pollard over here. What I will say is that unlike me, Tony Pollard has actual talent. He has actual skill. He is somebody that is elite at something, and that includes running the football. We've talked about this before. Games in which he gets a lot of work. He's had 13 career games where he's gotten 15 or more touches. In those games, he's averaging over 19 fantasy points per game. Last year, Giants allowed the highest yards per reception to running backs last season. Obviously, Pollard, an accomplished pass catcher. And they also allow 5.2 yards per carry last season. That was second most in the NFL. I don't know that they did enough this offseason to really offset that. We expect a massive workload for Tony Pollard behind a good offensive line. I am at running back 3 this week. He's a top 3 play to me, and it wouldn't be shocking if on Monday morning we're talking about number 1 running back in fantasy for week 1, Tony Pollard, heading into Monday Night Football.
Yeah, I think Pollard is one of the most interesting players in week 1 just to see the extent of the usage, because I don't think people realize this. That last year, Tony Pollard, despite being running back 8 on the season in PPR, Tony Pollard only got 36% of the Cowboys' carries. Only 36%. He got less carries than Ezekiel Elliott. And I think if he's at 60% of their carries and he stays healthy for 17 games, then he's the best player in fantasy this year.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jay. We've been excited about him. Obviously, he highlights Matthew's love list for week 1. And once again, you saw that graphic with the Giants numbers on it. I don't think they have the linebackers in the middle of the field to run and cover with him and also stop him from the inside and outside running. All right, that takes us to our next player here, Jay, Joe Mixon, who I remember when we got back from our long break, Matthew was saying, listen, people are overlooking Joe Mixon right now. The ADP doesn't make a lot of sense. Obviously, Mixon is a guy that can, feed off of Cincinnati's high-octane passing attack because they find themselves in the red zone so often. He's another running back that makes the love list as they head to Cleveland for week 1.
Yeah, some questions about Cleveland's defense against the rush last year. They were not great. And Joe Mixon, I think he's just the guy who's unexciting because he's not Jamar Chase and he's not, being a wide receiver who's catching the ball from Joe Burrow, but he's just rock solid. He's been behind a not great offensive line the past couple of years. I don't think it's going to be great this year either, but the guy just produces, and he's on what's going to be a top 5 offense, we think, and he's going to be in scoring position a lot. So yeah, unexciting, but particularly in this matchup, you fully expect him to produce.
Matthew, is there something also to Joe Burrow really not having a summer, dealing with the calf injury, and him expected, we think he's going to play, but also the fact that it might be nice to turn around and hand the ball to Joe Mixon to protect Burrow a little bit in the early goings?
Yeah, you think about last year, those first 4 games that Burrow was coming off of, 2021 when he was coming off the ACL, right? Like, he averaged like 10 less pass attempts a game in those first 4 games than he did weeks 5 through the rest of the season, right? So you could see them going a little bit more run heavy in this game with Burrow coming off of the injury as well. Last year, he averaged over 19 touches a game, his 5th straight season averaging 19 or more touches. So we talk about this all the time. It's talent and opportunity. Well, he's going to get opportunity, and Jay, to your point, he's also going to get opportunity in close. Last year, Joe Mixon, top 3 among running backs in red zone touches per game, and he had the 2nd most carries inside an opponent's 10-yard line. When they get in close, they like to give it to to Joe Mixon. One of the reasons I talked about his ADP not making sense is because he's a workhorse back on a good offense. Now, the reason he was dropping in ADP was off the field concerns. Is he going to get suspended? Is there going to be some sort of issue? And that, obviously, you never know, but the fact of the matter is we're starting the season and he hasn't been, there's been no suspension. All expectations are is that at the moment he's going to play every single game. So this game against Cleveland, which last year allowed the third most rushing touchdowns, yeah, Joe Mixon, I think, has got a pretty good shot at getting into the end zone. I was a top 10 play this week. He's going to get a lot of work in a good matchup.
This next player, we don't have to wait too long to see his debut, and that's David Montgomery, who is obviously traveling to play the Chiefs. He is the part of the two-headed attack in Detroit with Jahmyr Gibbs. And listen, Barry, obviously with Montgomery, he steps into what you said people will think is the Jamal Williams role, but maybe with a little bit more meat on the bone. And the best part is, I think, Chris Jones won't be on the field for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, right, you think about this Chiefs defensive line from last year. Frank Clark's now in Denver. Chris Jones is going to hold out. We don't expect him to play tonight. And so David Montgomery, who's, not a terrible pass catcher. I think he'll be more involved in the passing game than Jamal Williams last year, right? He's had 3 straight years of a target share of at least 11% and 300 receiving yards. It's not a ton, but it's something. First game on the road at Kansas City. How much do we see Jahmyr Gibbs tonight? That's a question for you. I do know that what they want to do is they want to run the ball behind a very good offensive line, try to keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline, try to take that Arrowhead crowd out of it. Those are all cliches, but they're true. Cliches are cliches because they are true. 12 of his 15 healthy games last season, Montgomery had at least 15 touches. I expect that workload at least again tonight. Remember, the Chiefs are they're not an intimidating defensive front. Again, to your point, they're not going to have Chris Jones here as well. So David Montgomery's my running back 17 this week. I have him as a top 20 play, a solid number 2 running back. He's on the love list, and I'm just going to admit this now in front of you, Jay, and in front of you, Connor, and a national audience. I have an uncomfortable amount of David Montgomery this year. I'm in 16 leagues, and I think I have Montgomery in 13 of them. I have an uncomfortable amount of David Montgomery. So if he comes out tonight and lays an egg, it's going to be bad for me tomorrow. But I'm a believer in David Montgomery this season. I'm a believer in him tonight against the Chiefs. I think there's a chance he gets in the end zone, just as for those of you placing wagers in legal states.
The problem of sitting next to you for week after week after week is that I feel like I have David Montgomery in every single league that I'm not in with you, Matthew. So the fantasy happy hour world is watching closely the David Montgomery debut with the Lions. A couple other running backs receiving votes here, Jay. Of course, Raheem Mostert. He'll play the Chargers. He's in a great situation as Jeff Wilson is on the short-term IR. Devon Achane is still dealing with a shoulder injury. We'll see how much usage he gets, assuming he's active. And then Khalil Herbert there for the Bears in a bit of a trio of a backfield, but they got the Green Bay defense.
Yeah, Raheem Mostert is the interesting one to me, who I think is being underrated. And I think back to when the Dolphins played the Chargers last year in primetime and just how bad Tua was in that game. That's the worst I've seen Tua Tagovailoa play under Mike McDaniel. And I do wonder if they lean more into Mostert. The Chargers had a bottom 4 rushing defense last year in terms of EPA per play against by the rush. So I think that Mostert should be in line for a massive game.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way. Barry, is there I actually want to know your take on Herbert, because this is a backfield that everybody is just so desperately trying to figure out. They obviously used a 4th-round pick on a power back in Roschon Johnson. They did sign Deontay Foreman. But Herbert's the guy that we've already seen play for the Bears, and when healthy and when right, looks like the most explosive runner that they have.
Yeah, it feels like he's going to get 65 to 70% of the Bears' carries, and we'll see what happens, obviously, in Week 1. But you think about what happened in the preseason. Herbert played all of his snaps with Justin Fields and the first-team offense, so he wasn't out there with any kind of scrubs. Last year, 5.7 yards per carry, which led all qualified running backs. Green Bay, by the way, allowed the 5th highest yards per carry per average per game last year as well. So, yeah, Herbert I kind of like in a game in which, against Green Bay, where they're going to want to run the ball. The reason Herbert dropped as much as he did in drafts is because people thought, well, you're going to have Deontay Foreman, you got Roschon Johnson, does Travis Homer get in there and take some third down work? But if Herbert plays again, 65, 70% of the snaps, which I think is going to happen. I think he's going to play the majority of the snaps. I think he'll do 2 series, and then Deontay Foreman will come in for a 3rd series and give him a breather. But at the end of the day, he's going to wind up with 15 or so touches in this game. And last year, for his career, when he's gotten at least 12 touches, he's got 8 career games where he's gotten at least 12 touches. He averages basically 16 fantasy points per game. So I do think Herbert is kind of interesting here. Worth noting about Mostert, Devon Achane did return to practice yesterday. So that is something be interesting to see how much run he gets, him or Savon Ahmed, because we know Wilson is hurt and Myles Gaskin was released by the Dolphins. So really going to be interesting to see how the Dolphins running back room plays out. But I'm with Jay here. Big game coming for friend of the show, Raheem Mostert.
Let's jump into the running back hate list for week 1, and that is headlined by Najee Harris, who will be playing the 49ers. The 49ers, by the way, who just gave Nick Bosa a lot of money to return to the team. So good for Nick Bosa and that defense, which really needs him. Barry, is this about the matchup, or is this also about the summer of Jalen Warren that we just kind of witnessed?
Why do I have to choose just one, Connor?
Right.
Why can't it be
both? The world
both?
is yours. Take
right?
both.
I mean, it's a brutal matchup, right? I mean, no team in the NFL allowed fewer rushing yards or lower yards per carry to running backs last season than the San Francisco 49ers. Nick Bosa, to your point, just got paid. We expect them to have a very strong defense once again. And so, against San Francisco last year, here's the entire list of running backs that got at least 80 yards from scrimmage. Chris McCaffrey, Josh Jacobs. That's it. So you think about Jalen Warren, who last year basically on his final 5 games averaged double-digit touches. We've seen him used a lot with the first-team offense in the preseason. I'm worried this is a little bit more of a split. So you're telling me basically no running back last year got even 80 scrimmage yards against the Niners. And now, so it's a really tough matchup, and he's going to be splitting time. Or, even if he gets 65% of the running back carries, it's just tough to see him as anything other than a touchdown-dependent flex. I'm at running back 26 in my current rankings. Ideally, you're not starting Najee Harris this week.
Jay, you've kind of been someone that said maybe the pendulum has swung too far the other way with Najee Harris this summer. Obviously he falls beyond round 6 at times, things like that. But do you have some concern about the split usage in that backfield?
I think for this week in particular, it's more just about the Niners,
right.
And that's where just running backs go to die. At least they were last year. You just couldn't get anything going against San Francisco. The summer of Jalen Warren, I think it might end like the summer of George, which ended with George Costanza's legs in a state of atrophy. I think that Jalen Warren, he's got a little bit too far where now, it seems to be in leagues that we're in. I keep getting Najee Harris in the 6th round. It's just ridiculous.
Nobody wants anything to do with him.
But at some point, you've got to start taking Najee Harris.
And he was hurt last year, to be fair. He was banged up.
He was banged up. He was behind what I think was a worse offensive line. It's a lot of the same members, but they are older, more mature. I think it's just going to be a better offense in general. And I think Najee will get first crack. I think he will get the opportunity to fail. I think he probably offers more as a pass catcher. I think that he may not get the usage of last year, but he will get, I think he'll be more efficient. So this week is not great, but going forward, I think Najee is being underdrafted.
How about another running back on the hate list here, Jamal Williams against the Titans? This is an interesting one here, Jay, because you have Alvin Kamara dealing with the suspension. Kendra Miller, they used a 3rd-round pick on Kendra Miller, and he will be a big focal part of that rushing attack at some point this season. But he's had a lot of different injuries this summer, some unfortunate injuries. But the Titans are a tough matchup for Jamal Williams, and this is a Saints team with Derek Carr. We think they could air it out a little bit as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people forget that it wasn't actually the Niners who ended last season as the most efficient run defense in the league. It was the Tennessee Titans. And so I think that just with the matchup, with the fact also that Tennessee's secondary has been so susceptible as well, particularly towards the end of last season. So I would think that, if there's any time to let Derek Carr play with his new toys, including my man Michael Thomas, then this is the week.
I was going to say, Barry, did you hear that? It sounded like Michael Thomas's music during that rant.
Yeah, can I tell you something? Connor, don't do me a favor. Cover Jay's ears. I don't want him to hear this, but just you and I, if I can just talk to you for a second. I heard from a source yesterday, a source that's been pretty good to me. I heard from a source yesterday that actually Michael Thomas might be healthy. That he's not doing any talk. And the source is just they're excited about him again. I don't know. It's awful. I'm like,
just
no,
when you thought
can't say that to me. When I thought I was out. So we'll see how true it is on Sunday. But to your point here about Jamal Williams, The fact of the matter is, so Kendre Miller, we don't expect him. He's been banged up throughout the preseason. I don't know how much we're going to see him on Sunday, if at all. And it's a brutal matchup against the Titans, right? Only one team in the NFL allowed fewer rushing touchdowns to opposing running backs last year than the Tennessee Titans. Jamal Williams, when he was in Green Bay, he was involved in the passing game. He wasn't really involved that much in Detroit. Less than a 3% target share with the Lions last year. And I don't know if that's because they had DeAndre Swift or they just didn't trust him. So we just don't know if Jamal Williams is going to be used in the passing game here. And it's worth noting that last season, in games in which he didn't score a touchdown, he averaged under 6 fantasy points a game. It's so funny that one of the beat reporters that covers the Saints tweeted out something yesterday about how Kendre Miller's availability for Sunday is in doubt. We don't know if he's going to be able to go or not. And my friend Sigmund Bloom of Football Guys does a great job over there. He quote tweets that and says, this is going to be a 20 for 70 game for Jamal Williams, and then Taysom Hill comes in and vultures all the touchdowns. Like, that's what's going to happen, right? Jamal Williams is going to get 20 carries for like 73 yards and no receptions, and then they're going to get in close, and they're going to do 2 gadget plays. Taysom Hill is going to have 3 carries for 7 yards and 2 touchdowns and drive all of us crazy. I'm nervous about Jamal Williams. I'm at running back 28. Just barely a top 30 play. I just, like, if you're desperate for a flex, I don't mind it, I suppose, and you hope that he gets into the end zone here. But I think there's going to be a lot of people that want to play him in DFS, that want to use him as a top 20 back, as a starter, saying, like, oh, he's going to get all the work. And I'm just like, all the work against Tennessee without any passing game usage is still problematic.
Yeah, and on that, Matthew, to your point, his rushing prop is set at 53.5, Jamal Williams, and the game has a total of 41.5. So Jamal Williams, if he doesn't get in the end zone, then it's unlikely he's going to provide value, and obviously he is no lock to get in the end zone. There's a decent chance he does, but that's what you're counting on there, so that it makes him a flex.
Yeah, Jeffrey Simmons in that Titans front has made that tough for a lot of running backs in recent memory.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.